going to share with you highlights of our Wall Street conference that was held this year. Some of you were unable to attend, but we wanted you to hear this historic conversation between Reverend Jackson and John Rogers. Remember, it was John Rogers' grandfather who was at the original Wall Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma. So you don't want to miss this discussion at all.
100 years ago, Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And Ron's father owned a hotel in the Stratford Hotel 100 years ago. John, what happened?
It was a horrific thing. As you know, 100 years ago, we had this race riot that was just totally unfair. You know, a young black man was falsely accused of assaulting a white woman in an elevator. You know, we don't think it really happened. People were afraid that this young man was going to be lynched that evening. So the black leadership came to the jailhouse to protect this young man. And my great-grandfather, J.B. Stratford, was one of the leaders in the community. So he was there. He was a part of bringing people together, and he always had a long history of speaking for economic justice and social justice in Tulsa. At the same time, he owned the Stratford Hotel, which was one of the largest black-owned hotels of the nation at the time. With all of his land, he was a millionaire already back then. And so during the Tulsa Race Massacre, they burned down his entire hotel, as we know, in the whole Greenwood section of Tulsa. And my great-grandfather had to escape Tulsa because there was real fears that they were going to arrest him and possibly lynch him because he was seen as a leader in the community.
300 people were killed. Others were sent in exile, never seen again. Several thousand.
Exactly. I know there are graves there. They're trying to find the bodies of those that were killed during the race riots. And again, luckily, fortunately, my great-grandfather was able to escape Tulsa. He got to Kansas City, where my grandfather, his son, used his legal skills to stop Tulsa from extraditing him back to Tulsa, where he could possibly be lynched.
Another Dred Scott case, huh?
It could have been. And as you know, you knew my mom very well. She told everyone that she became a lawyer. You know, the first black woman to graduate from the University of Chicago Law School. She was inspired to be a lawyer by her father using his legal skills to save his father's life. And that's why my mom became a lawyer and, you know, ultimately settled, as you know, on Greenwood Avenue in Chicago.
100 years ago. What's different today?
Well, one of the things right now, at least we're not fearful of, the fear of lynching is much less than it used to be. We know that. But when it comes to equal economic opportunity, we're no better off. You know, it's still a challenge for African-American entrepreneurs to build a business of scale and size that can last. As we know, we've lost so many of our great businesses. You know, Johnson Publishing is gone. You know, Independence Bank is gone.
Seaway Bank.
Seaway Bank's gone.
We've lost radio stations, TV stations in the last 20 years. Exactly.
We're going backwards. The wealth gap is much worse today than it was from our grandparents' generation. Relative to white Americans, the dean of Yale Business School has all this data that shows that we're worse off than our grandparents were relative to white Americans.
My concern now is that we've lived in 24 years since we began this project.
I think our Wall Street project has had enormous impact. You know, with the work that you've done to shine a light on the unfairness in Wall Street, how it still doesn't have the appropriate number of African Americans in leadership roles, in managing director role, partnership roles. We're still not enough black financial services companies in this country, but you've helped shine a light on it and has helped to make improvements and created opportunities for all of us. I always tell people we got one of our biggest clients, General Motors, because you introduced me to the CEO of General Motors at the Wall Street Project. And I got a conversation going with him. He added our mutual funds to their 401k plan. And literally probably 20 years later, we're still there. And it was because of your leadership and actually later on, support from other Rainbow Plus leaders that kept us in there when we were having a little bit of a tough time. And people went to bat for us and fought for us because they believed in your values and believed in our values.
When we began Wall Street Project, they didn't honor Dr. King's birthday on the Wall Street Stock Exchange. They do now.
Well, that's so important. And it's so important that we honor Dr. King. And as you know, he was always on this issue of economic justice. He always talked about, you know better than I, how white Americans, progressive white Americans, deplore prejudice, but accept or ignore economic injustice. And that continues to be the case today, that people forget that we need to have the opportunity to fully participate in our capitalist democracy.
We're free but not equal. Free but not have access. I call it the 4 stages of our struggle. Stage 1 was to end legal slavery, 240 years. 2nd was to end legal Jim Crow. 3rd, right to vote. 4th, access to capital. We don't have access to capital.
We're making some progress with getting access to capital, but we also need access to customers, which you've always understood better than any other political leader and community leader and national leader that you are, and international leader that you are, that if we don't have customers, we can't grow our businesses. You're the one that forced the grocery stores and the drug stores to have Afro Sheen and Ultra Sheen on their shelves. You made sure that happened. We need to have customers. And too many of these large, wide institutions continue to not work with black businesses. They talk a good game, promise to do it, find every excuse not to. And so it's so important. Your voice is so critical in pushing that.
We're trying to leverage our economic power. We have political power, but more economic power, and we're not using it yet effectively.
That's for sure.
We have to beg people, please vote, please vote. I'm able to spend money. Stop spending so much in places that does not respect you. So access to capital is a big deal to us.
I understand how important access to capital is and access to customers, but the one thing I don't understand, Reverend, is that a prior generation, when Maynard Jackson was mayor of Atlanta and Harold Washington here in Chicago, we had Coleman Young in Detroit and Marion Barry in Washington, they were all singing from your hymnal to make sure that we got economic opportunities in those great cities. We've lost a lot of that type of political leadership for some people.
We lost the edge.
Right.
It was a big deal for them to get blacks with pension funds for the first time. Maynard started his own financial company, right?
Right.
4 years after today, we should have access to pension funds, state, federal pension funds. Well, how much pension funds do you think our federal government has?
Oh, the federal government has, I think it's over $1 trillion, I think. Don't hold me to that, because it's.
What about 401k? What you do?
Yeah, they have a huge defined contribution plan, the equivalent of a 401k, that's, my understanding, is completely run by BlackRock. They've got one firm that manages the entire thing. But if you think of all the big contractors that work with the federal government, all the big defense companies and healthcare companies and American Airlines, United Airlines, all these folks that have been bailed out by the government still refuse to work with blacks when it comes to professional services and financial services, for the most part. There's always an exception here or there.
We've all not raised the right questions. Given Biden's interest in development and fighting racism and all that, if he were to organize a development bank, as a citizens, there's so much bigger property than farming, urban farming in cities. But we cannot get capital to grow. If you were the big banks lend us money reluctantly, something called CEC. Mm-hmm. They're not in business to develop undeveloped ghettos. The fact of the matter, if we had a development bank, a lot of time about the Marshall Plan. The Marshall Plan was 50-year loans and 2% government secured. Development. It meant to not make money, but develop. If we had the development banks for our major cities, blacks, Latinos, and Asian Americans, that'd be a major step in the right direction, John.
That would be the right thing. But just remember, when we get that capital, we need that customers. Because as you know, what McDonald's has done, which you've been so close to McDonald's over the years, they have 5 of the top largest black-owned companies in this country are McDonald's suppliers. And those companies don't need capital, because when the McDonald's is buying sausages from them or croutons from them or syrups from them, they can get all the capital they need. And so you need to make sure that we get these more and more corporations to act the way McDonald's does, the way that Exelon does, the way the University of Chicago does, to work with black businesses.
Sure, but you know, John, we also have the government, the big business, they get the tax cut to build the business, the tax break once they get the business, and then the government becomes their market. So a lot of their market is built into the institution, the lending.
Well, that's true. But when you think about these banks lending, when you talk about the banks also spend a fortune on all kinds of products and projects. And, and I've talked to your good friend Maxine Waters about this, and as chairman of the House Financial Services Committee, and her colleague Joyce Beatty, now the chairman of the Black Congressional Caucus. It is just so important that they demand that these financial institutions do business with Black people, It
seems to me that if we were to demand in this year's 24th Wall Street Conference, a development bank, it's not just for Blacks. Even Blacks, Latinos, and Asian Americans who are facing the racism every day, who are facing the hardships. And you get money based on your poverty level. A kind of reparations of sorts. Repair the damage done. We cannot, the wealth gap is getting wider, right? Mm-hmm. Few have more have least. We can only break the cycle if we have a plan to break into the economy. We do football Super Bowl a few weeks ago, right? Everybody's excited, thought Kansas was going to win, and Tampa didn't have a chance. Tampa won the game. But when the playing field is even, you don't win the game on hype on the field. We do well in football, basketball, playing field even, rules public, goals lit, referee fair, scores transparent. Those 5 qualities must exist beyond the ball field, John.
That's for
even playing field, public rules, field goals, scores transparent.
Transparency. I'm so glad you talked about transparency because it's just so important. Here in our home state, Chris Welch, our new Speaker of the House, he forced all the corporations to be transparent about the lack of diversity on their boards, which I know you have been an advocate for generations. And all of a sudden, when they've had to show exactly how much lack of diversity there are in their boardrooms, they're feeling the pressure to do the right thing. And all of a sudden, Walgreens gets their only Black director after Chris Welch forced the transparency here in Illinois.
I want to spend a little tribute to Vernon Jordan. Vernon was on many of the boards, demanded from those companies affirmative action programs. So he did sit on the board, he worked on the board. Too many Blacks sit on boards, but they don't make a difference.
That's for sure. You and I have talked a lot about the fact that we got not only get more Blacks on boards, but get Blacks on boards who are going to fight for economic justice and fairness once they get in that board.
You organize Black board members around the country. You put some demands so when they get on the board, they kind of know what they ask for.
We've asked everybody to agree to do that and sign off on our pledge of measuring, purchasing, and people in philanthropy, the 3 Ps. But also, as you know, every year we've had a leader like yourself, the late Congressman John Lewis, Harry Belafonte, Andy Young, your old friends, all the folks who are close to Dr. King, to come to the conference, speak to the next generation of Black directors, and remind them that they have a responsibility to fight for economic justice in the boardroom, to live the values of Dr. King, to follow John Lewis's mantra, make good trouble once you're in that boardroom.
It seems to me that we fight for the right to vote and get leverage. We don't fight for the right of economic justice.
These venture capital guys and hedge fund guys who are making hundreds of millions of dollars, if not billions, they've got to be supporting you.
It seems to me that one thing that we must address is know what to ask for. One of the values you had at your annual conference of leaders, what to ask for. Right now, given Biden's disposition toward racial justice and inclusion, we should know precisely how much pension funds they are. Well, I should have pension funds to invest. I shall to invest 401k, because we'll contribute taxes and representation in Washington, for example. We'll contribute to the taxes and the pension funds that tell us we're investment unworthy. UAW workers, for example, auto workers. Those who have the money will invest in the ghetto by and large. They say, well, the money comes from them, but we live as investment unworthy. That's a very subjective notion, So the trust property in America is now vacant. The rise of 1968, still vacant. They're trying to plant corn and vegetables in those places. That's most of the businesses, because there's a fourth stage of our capital is an interesting stage. We've had slavery, 246 years. Jim Crow, another 80 years. Segregation after that. Right to vote. Now that's the capital. We must demand our share of capital. If every state, if we got our share of pension funds to invest in every state, federal government, our share 401k, we'd have capital because it's our share capital.
Exactly. If we could get our opportunities to fully participate in the wealth building parts of our economy. You and I have talked about the fact also we have this term supplier diversity, which means that well-meaning people will only give us a chance to do supply chain work, which is important. Construction, catering, janitorial service, those are important industries. But the wealth and power today are on Wall Street, Silicon Valley, professional services. That's where people are making the real money, and that's what
we're Silicon Valley. They had 185 white board members, 36 white women, 3 blacks, 1 Latino. Now blacks on the board of Apple and Facebook and all that. Because I work in Silicon Valley. But and Jim Bell, for example, at Apple, he's leveraging because he understands business, make it happen.
I remember you had all those visits to Silicon Valley and made such a difference. And and you work closely with Black Enterprise that helped create all the data that we needed to be able to show the lack of diversity there. But if you hadn't shown up, it would still be the way it is.
Black Enterprise is a great outlet for us. I miss Jet so much and Ebony so much. Jack, if you were in the military in Australia, Africa, or wherever, you Jet magazine. We don't have a Jet magazine.
It's heartbreaking, huh?
When Till was lynched, there was a couple of, the Chicago Defender made such an issue of it, and Jet's was biggest magazines covering Emmett Till's debased body. 100,000 came to visit because black press had a role to play, and they played it magnificently.
It's just so heartbreaking to lose Ebony and Jet. And as you know, that headquarters building was so powerful, such a powerful symbol for black entrepreneurship around the world.
11 stories high. John won the 33-story building. They wouldn't lend them on Michigan Avenue. So he had to use his own money. Herman Russell in Atlanta has built this nice restaurant, first class, and hotel. He wanted to have a bigger hotel. Sitting on bank, but he had to put up his own money. So there's still a certain notion about black in business. So some of us don't believe in black businesses, don't appreciate its impact. We must now demand access to investment capital, pension funds and university pension funds. Universities are notorious, right? Name some of them. Harvard, they will manage that money.
Well, they're making progress, under the pressure they're getting from Congress, again, progressive leaders like Maxine and Joyce and Congressman Cleaver and Congressman Kennedy, yourself. Others are forcing these universities to do more, and they're starting to do it. Finally, some of them are using black managers for their endowments.
They shouldn't react to us because, including the growth, everybody wins. I mean, we came to football and reacted, now everybody's winning. Basketball, everybody's winning. Because when we get in, it doesn't hurt everybody, it helps everybody.
That's for sure. And as my father always said, you got to live up to the commitments you make to others. These institutions have made commitments that they care about diversity and inclusion, but they haven't been living those values.
I want people to come to Wall Street this year, hit us online, rainbowpushes.org. You hit Wall Street, get how to connect with us. We must leverage that habit to get our share of capital. Because if you're big and somebody else writing your paycheck, you're never free. We're free, we're not equal. We're free.
Because of the segregation, because of the Jim Crow laws, we didn't create a chance to build wealth that can go down and be passed down generation to generation.
Separate equal meant that we were separate, but we were on the scorcher side of the equation. So we were separated, but we could not separate from access to capital, banks, insurance companies, and lending, separated from military protection. So the hoodlums just burned up Tulsa 100 years ago, case in point. And we couldn't even make money with our own community at that time. Now we have more freedom, we have more political power. Our demand structure must be it. That's what this conference is about this week. We're demanding our share of pension funds. I keep sharing pension funds because that money's just there. It's our money. Right. All the workers, it's our money. Service workers, it's our money. Airline, it's our money. So when we meet with the president, we have to demand that we know how much pension funds there are. To get our share of pension funds, it'd be a lot of money, wouldn't it?
It'd be a lot. It'd be a lot. We would all of us in financial services would be in a whole other category. Our businesses would be double our size, triple our size.
On your company, Ariel Marathon, describe your company. What do you do? How have you grown, sir?
Well, Ariel, we have about $17 billion under management that's but it's in two areas. One is we do manage pension plans and parts of endowments where we take a portion of large pools of capital and invest it. Our specialty is the stock market, and we invest in international and global investing in small and mid-cap value stocks. That's what we've been doing for a long, long time. The second business is we have our mutual funds that are available for individual investors and can be added to any 401k plan in the country, can be a part of any financial advisors menu when they're talking to their wealthy customers, their individual customers.
People who are watching you today, what can they do to help Ariel?
What they can do is when they go to work, say, why isn't Ariel Mutual Funds on our platform at the 401k? Why isn't it one of the options in our 401k?
We have a list of companies.
Yeah.
Ariel's not in the list.
Exactly.
If they knew Ariel was in the list, they could choose Ariel.
Exactly. Just like, you push grocery, I use that example all the time. You push grocery stores that put black products on the shelves so the black consumers could pick those products along with Coke and Pepsi and all the other big brands. Well, people with their 401k, they got Vanguard or Fidelity or T. Rowe Price, these big giant companies. Ariel Fund should be one of those options for employees. So people go to work and say, we care about diversity and inclusion, but none of our fund options are black owned.
I raise this because some of us don't know the ask what you're talking about. When we do the access pension funds, I keep pension funds because so much money is pension funds. I mean, what they've done, Cal Spurs.
Cal Stirs and Cal Pers, yeah.
Man, the kind of money they've invested, it's our money. We're not demanding it. So I want to thank you for having this conversation today. I want many black board members who are watching on board, something because of our work. Support us in our efforts to make a difference. We're going to spend a lot of time this year on the development bank idea, the development bank, the idea of effective use of our monies to invest them, the green line, the red line zone. And if we may or may not, it may run us out of politics. We have every product on the store, we have margin of profit. We negotiate with anybody. No company can survive without our investment.
So important the work you're doing, Reverend.
Chain store has 15,000 products. Every product in that store needs us.
We need you, right. We need you, and we got to get all of our folks to be involved and engaged with PUSH. I talk about it all the time, how important your work is, and people need to be there, show up, write their checks, be supportive, and tell friends to come. It's just, it's in their own interest.
RainbowPush.org, and hit money. Hit Wall Street. Just thank you for sharing today your grandfather's story, your story. While you're so rich, you couldn't help it, huh? The legacy of it. Your grandfather was a hotel owner in Tulsa. His son freed him, saved him from being lynched. Your mother succeeded him. And so that legacy of family. And the Wall Street project here, we're going to focus a lot on 4-stage action, capital, industry, technology, and deal flow. And you're in the middle of it. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.